you currently church shopping, looking for that right church for you or your family? Perhaps you've been looking and been turned off by organized religion. It happens. Let me suggest you try Unity Church. We are a positive, practical, progressive approach to Christianity. Many who have found us have said, I didn't know there was a church that taught what I always believed. Let's be honest, people shop for clothes, good restaurants, and the right church that feeds them spiritually. If you're seeking a spiritual truth beyond tradition, try Unity Church. Come join us.
From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
For 2 weeks now, I've been talking about a topic, it was a two-part series called God's Esteem Streem. God's Esteem Streem. And I thought I was done at a two-part series, but God said, no, we're not done. We're all slow learners on this, I guess, or something. So anyway, this is part 3, surprise to me as well, okay? And God's Esteem Streem is really about a healthy self-esteem from a spiritual perspective, from the place of how God sees us, not how we see ourselves. We need to begin to see ourselves in the light of that which God sees us to be and has created us to be and holds us to be. And so self-esteem has to do with self-love. They're one and the same. We said they were synonymous. And so we'll just go over a couple of things to highlight that on first and second parts. We emphasized the importance that Jesus placed on love. Of course, we're here to love. There's nothing that's more important than our learning love and the energy of love and all that it means. And so Jesus said that the two greatest commandments were about love. And the first commandment was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And that's very, very vital and important to be in that process as well, certainly. And then the second, he said, was like unto it. And the second was to love your neighbor as yourself. And we talked about how important it is that you need to remember as yourself, and that you can't love your neighbor until you love yourself. You can't give what you don't have. If you're on empty and you find it very difficult to love yourself, you're going to find it nearly difficult to impossible to love others as well, at least in a healthy kind of love. And so it's important to learn to love ourselves. And healthy self-esteem, we said, is knowing inwardly that you are of value. No matter what, you are of value. And it carries with it a feeling. It's a feeling that you feel comfortable within yourself. You feel comfortable in your own skin. You're accepting of yourself where you are. You're loving of yourself as you are. And it's accepting yourself while at the same time being honest with yourself and recognizing that there are things to see that are good and things to see that are not so good, that have to be worked on. We are in process, certainly. So we recognize that we're not expressing perfection, but that we are just aware and awake in the process of healing and renewing ourselves and moving towards a greater expression of that which God holds us to be. And so we shared characteristics of low self-esteem. And things like low self-esteem includes the need for validation outside of yourself, really, really needing others to tell you you're okay. It's the tendency to blame ourselves for everything, or blame another or others, much into blame. It's various fears of change of one kind or another, certainly. It's the tendency to want to control and be in control and even dominate others. It tends to be a person that is constantly negative, always seeing the worst or what can be the worst. The need to be right, always be right. It's the tendency to always be comparing, looking outside yourself and comparing, and then always arriving and concluding either you get to feel inferior or you get to feel superior, and that whole dynamic. And there is excessive criticism and excessive fault finding that is typical of low self-esteem. It can be the person also that is the under or overachiever. It can be any of the extremes, really. We talked a little bit about a person that is extreme in competitiveness, that may be some low self-esteem. They always have to win, just along with I always have to be right, that kind of thing. Anything that is extreme behavior may be related to that. So characteristics of high self-esteem, we're going to spend some time there, don't we? They include getting validation from within yourself. It's knowing within yourself. It's honoring individual differences. Everyone doesn't have to be just like you or the way you want them to be. It's listening to other points of view, whereas not everyone has to believe exactly what you believe in order for you to be comfortable. And it's things like self-acceptance, it's self-respect, it's self-confidence, and it's a feeling of love towards yourself. You love yourself because you're an expression of God. And so we established that, just that very fact, that a dimension of loving God is loving ourself, okay? And we talked about the self, which with a capital S, that at our core is the seed of our true self. At our core, that's who we are. God created us, and so God doesn't create junk. And so we are created in the image and after the likeness of God. And so there is that self, as I say, with a capital S, which is of God. And to love the part of you that is God is another way of loving God. It's to love the part of you that is of God is to love God. You're a part of God. And so it's important to do that. It's not narcissistic or unhealthy to love yourself, knowing that it's the part of you that is connected with the divine, and loving and accepting yourself where you are. And so to love ourselves unconditionally and to love others unconditionally is then a way of seeing and identifying really the core that we're talking about, the core self that is in us and that is in others, though it hasn't yet come into full expression as yet. And we understand that, of course. An awakening person is one who is, we said, on a journey of loving God, loving themselves, loving others, loving life, and coming to know that all interactions and all events and happenings in a person's life have meaning and purpose and are meant to take us deeper in our pathway or journey of learning and growing. All things that are happening, all encounters, all responses and reactions, they all have an opportunity to take us further. And we said that inwardly, we are basically all the same. You know, that we are all children of God inwardly. We all have the Spirit of God within us. And our value and worth is not determined by an external view. And that ultimately, when you develop an internal view and you know the inner of you that is of God, you will then also see the inner of everyone else. And that's where equality is realized. You get that, yes, we're all different with an outward perspective. We look different, we wear different clothes, we have different houses we live in. It's all different out there, and we feel separate from one another. But with the inward view, once you grow into that, then you look at everyone with an equality, because what you're seeing is not the level at which they're expressing. You're beginning to see them as God sees them. The truth that has been covered over, the inner core, the real being. And there's a sense of compassion for everyone, because we're all in this process. We're all in this journey of waking up and going back to, again, loving ourselves, whereby we can love all others, whereby we can be reflective of the love of God, which is unconditional. It's very, very powerful. And so what we're saying is that essentially in various ways we have covered over our true self. And our job then becomes one of uncovering who we really are. And that's part of our healing. And so we're here to love and to discover our true self. So today, what I want to do is look at these things that we've just kind of gone over, and with a stronger focus on our relationships with others. We need to learn the value of relationships in life. We talked a lot about our relationship with ourselves. Now, let's talk about our relationships with others and how they can be really healthy and important. We need to understand their value. Our relationships in life are simply for learning to love. It's like a school. When you enter a relationship, you're stepping into a classroom. It's the classroom of learning how to love unconditionally. And it bumps up against a lot of things along the way, of course. Everything unlike love that comes up in our relationships have essentially come up for healing, for growth, for change, for transformation, for enlightenment. That's why it has come up, so that it can be released and let go and notice, this isn't who I am. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel good what I'm issuing out to my world or to others. And so everything unlike love comes up in our relationships for healing and growth. All relationships are tied to the inner person. We can say that there are basically three main areas of important relationships. And they're obvious. They are our relationship with God, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with others. And they are all essentially created from within. The quality of those relationships, all three, come from within the person. God is found within, a relationship with God. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. And so where the kingdom is, the king is. You understand? And so we know that God is holy and pure and sacred. We know that about God. And we know also then that we're told we're made in the image and after the likeness. And so that image and likeness of us is the true self that is pure and sacred and holy. You must know that. We must uncover that part of ourselves. That's been covered over with ignorance and limiting ideas and limiting beliefs and various things that we decided about ourselves that are untrue. And we know that the truth will begin to set us free. A healthy spiritual relationship with yourself would be one that knows itself as being part of God. Couldn't be healthier than knowing that you are part of God, that you are one with God, okay? Jesus said, the Father and I are one. And from there, he went everywhere and was able to see to the core of every soul that they were a child of God and there wasn't anyone that he couldn't love, okay? An unhealthy relationship with yourself is to be basically lost in the idea of separation, being separate from others, being separate from God, all of that. Lost in the illusions of a separate self and separate from God and basically, functioning from the voice of ego. Ego always arguing for separation, always arguing by looking outside to be afraid or fearful, as opposed to the Spirit of God, the voice of the Spirit inside of you is holy. That's why we call it the Holy Spirit, okay? And it's trying to guide you to the truth of who you are. And so if we have a really healthy relationship established from within, and that it has a connectedness to our true self, then our relationships with others are going to be so good because there is a connectedness to the part of you that is already whole and complete in the eyes of God. And you begin to touch and feel that dimension of yourself that is whole and complete, that there is a part of you that is there. But the truth is we don't go there. We don't really embrace that part of ourselves. And that's part of the process and the journey. That's what I'm talking to you about. As you want to step into God's esteem stream, you have to begin to know that there is this part of yourself that is made in the image and likeness, that is your true self, that is whole and complete. And begin to identify more with that and notice when you are not being that and make adjustments and healings. So relationships are huge. It's a huge area and domain for our opportunity to learn and grow and to simply become more aware. And, so what is it that we are learning? We're learning to love and to be loved. And what is it that we're healing? We're healing our past, really, our limiting ideas and beliefs. And what are we becoming more aware of? We're becoming more aware of what is true versus what is false about ourselves, about God, about life, all of that. We think that relationships are for finding someone to love us. We often start there. That's what relationships are about, finding someone to love us. But it might be more accurate to say that relationships play an important role in helping us to find ourselves, to find our true self, to find that part of us that is whole and complete, so that we can truly live happily with or without a partner, okay? In a relationship with a significant other, in love relationships. And I realize that some of you are have significant others, some of you may not have been, maybe again, another time. So understand that this is all things that you perhaps know to some extent already, but it's a good refresher, and also to know that it can be helpful wherever you are in the field of relationship. But this is some of the things for a committed relationship. They usually, stage one, there are 3 stages. Stage 1 is the romantic stage. It usually begins with, a strong physical and emotional attraction, and your body gives off all these endorphins that, cause you not to think straight, and, it produces all this exhilaration, and it projects perfection. It projects perfection onto each other, and many people get married in stage 1. And somewhere along the line, a year, 2 years, 3 years, who knows, it varies for each couple, stage 2 arrives. And that's where some of the romance and the infatuation has begun to wear off, or at least reduce. And this is a time of adjustment. And in most cases, there are power struggles that begin here. Each is, to some extent, attempting to mold the other into their ideal partner, if you will. And that can create, obviously, tension. And this is also when, in this stage, each person's issues of low self-esteem become more evident. Guilt and blame is used to control one another. And both keep looking for and wondering, what happened to all the lovey-dovey stuff in stage 1? Where did that go? And so conflicts begin around assumptions that each have made about how the relationship was going to look, or how each was going to be. And this is where everything unlike love, forgive me, everything unlike love begins to come up, to be healed, to be resolved, and family of origin issues and all kinds of things. It could be a very, very painful time, because it brings more evident to how much we need to be loved. Really, it just comes oozing up. And then when we're not loved the way we want to be loved, problems result. And so this is where, a person may even begin to wonder, what in the world was I thinking when I got married? I mean, most every couple has had that thought at one time or another. Each is asking the other to change, and then asking themselves, why do I have to be the one to change when they're the one with the problem? And so that goes on. So I just want to say there are no perfect relationships, and we all have wounds, we all have insecurities, we all have issues to heal, and many people present present to the public a persona that is really different from what they're really feeling inside and what's going on inside. And so during this time, it's very common for a person to build some sort of a wall of protection of sort that protects themselves from seeing their own issues, their own traits, their own behaviors, and this defense really is designed to protect oneself from seeing all of themselves. It's like too much to take on all at once. And so what this is called is projection. The result is that you project all of your stuff onto the other person. And so those things that are so uncomfortable for you to own, you disown and put it out on them. And you see everything wrong in the other person. And there are things that we're not ready simply yet to accept about ourselves or in ourselves. So we tend to be very judgmental, and we're judging others and our significant other as well. And so in a relationship that is awakening, a relationship that is evolving, it's very important to have learned about projection. Be willing to become aware of when you are in it. It would have been very helpful for me in my earlier days of marriage and so forth, and the things that my wife Diane and I went through, if I had understood and owned some of my stuff earlier on, would have helped a lot. wouldn't have had some of the difficult stages and pages we went through, as any relationship does. And so it's very important for you to learn and understand projection and own it and look for when you are doing it. It's something called mirroring. And what it means is that other people will mirror for us the things that we like or dislike. It helps us if we can learn to notice the characteristics of the things that we react to, either have a strong like or dislike for, it's good or bad, or we realize that it's reflecting back to us really parts of ourselves if we have that big reaction. And so if we are always being critical and always being fault-finding of our partner, and building a case sort of like, I don't know if I like this person, I don't know if I love this person, projection selves that we're actually building a case for not being able to like and love ourselves. Everything needs to be noticed back, you see. Even if another person criticizes you and it hurts and you kind of hang on to it and run it over and over in your mind, whether it's a person you aren't that close to or in a significant relationship, maybe it's a sibling or a coworker or something, just notice that if you have that kind of a reaction, you probably believe it, and it's a match for something that you have as an issue inside. We all have blind spots. We all have things that we, just aren't able to see or don't want to see, are difficult to uncover. And so it's very helpful to a person, and especially a person in relationship, to realize that everything that you judge, everything that you criticize, love, hate, react to, suffer over, or even are attracted to in another, is an opportunity to learn more about the hidden side of one's own consciousness. And so our need for another person to be different, is often a sign of our hidden need for ourself to be different, to be more, to be better. And that oftentimes we get so occupied on wanting to change the person we're closest to or the people around us that unconsciously we're using it to avoid the work that needs to be done on ourselves. And so it's just noticing that. I read where even, the analogy was made, even dog trainers know that they're not working on just the dog's behavior. Classes on dog training are really owner training classes, all right? And so, it's designed to change behavior on the owner. And so there's always something on our part. In our relationships, if we don't like the way that we're being treated or spoken to, we need to start with ourself and our behavior patterns, what's provoking some of this. We should always remember that bringing out our best, of course, is what brings the best out in others. And once we become an adult, move into adulthood, basically no one can give us self-esteem. So you can't get it from somebody else. And no one can really take it away. You simply didn't have it to begin with. They can bring up the awareness that self-esteem isn't there and you need to heal that. But no one can give or take away self-esteem, because if you do think that, you'll be in trouble. So we talked about stage 1 being infatuation, stage 2 being a kind of a power struggle. There is a stage 3. And as one person in the earlier service said, man, I just wanted to get through stage 2. It just reminded me what I went through. And this can be difficult. But obviously understand that these overlap. There's still loving, doving, infatuation parts along with stage 2. And stage 3 really involves moving beyond our projections, moving beyond control issues. We're more mature now, a more mature, loving relationship. We still can get upset, but each person is more aware of their own traits and the traits in the other as well. There's a greater degree of not just tolerance, but acceptance of the other. And there is also forgiveness, a greater ability to communicate with one another. And differences are approached from a more positive perspective. And there is some release of the old expectations that can't be met necessarily. And also some of the idealistic fantasies that one held to early on. There's a more realistic sense of accepting each other for who they are, where they are. And when in an unhealthy relationship, when attention is given to only the negative, rather than looking for the true self or trying to understand what it is that lies behind. That's when we enter into trouble. In a mature relationship, it doesn't see just all the faults. There's a more sense of, this person has a hurting inner part that's trying to heal. And so I'm not going to pounce all over that. I'm going to be more compassionate, try to be more understanding. I'm going to look at what that rears up in me as well. I remember Sig Paulson, one of the minister that was here prior to me, he would, several times when he was at the podium, I heard him say in the midst of his talk, and his wife's name was Janie, she's a lovely lady, he'd say, Janie and I, we've been divorced many times. And he just was being realistic that through stage 2, there are times where it just doesn't go well, and you have all this stuff coming up, but it's part of the process and journey of healing. And so you have to understand that. Once you understand that, it's very helpful also to move through some of that. And so, it means that you come to the place where whatever feelings come up, you begin to ask yourself the right questions, and you begin to own things that you previously were not willing to own, and you come from a new understanding. So each person in the relationship begins to take a greater responsibility for their own self-esteem, whereas in an unhealthy relationship, they're asking the other to give them the self-esteem, and that's really not possible. And so, it's clearing out old issues. It's clearing out limiting ideas and beliefs. And then when you go through that, what's left after that clearing is an unconditional love. There's an acceptance, there's a compassion, there's a caring that can be very beautiful. And so some of the main ideas of a successful awakened relationship then is simply get to know yourself, family origin issues, all of that, patterns of thinking and behaving. Ask yourself, would you want to be married to yourself? Good question. Learn to love yourself. God loves you unconditionally. That's what you're being called to, is that kind of love. Ask yourself what would happen in your relationship if you truly loved and appreciated yourself. Then you would be able to truly love and accept your partner and others in a much more unconditional fashion, because you're able to love yourself for who you are. You're then able to love them for who they are. And so learn to be patient and tolerant and forgiving, to accept the other, take responsibility for your own transformation, avoid projection, as we said. Don't disown your feelings, but notice your criticisms and your judgments and try to gain insight into them. Tell the truth to yourself about what you're feeling and own the feelings. And go forward and have fun in your relationship. In all your relationships. And just remember that, we're all spiritual beings, and we are all called to a greater understanding of who we really are. And the universe has order in it, and it will call forth people who will push our buttons in various ways until we own what our buttons are and heal them, unhook and uncover from what we're not, and stand true and tall to who we are, standing in God's esteem stream. God bless you all. Go be a light in the world.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.